All right, we are back to some deck videos. I hope you guys enjoyed all of the Duels of Runeterra 16 content that I put up earlier this week. But now, we are back into some decks. We are going to go with another tournament deck that we did see a lot in Duels of Runeterra, especially because of the way the format was. The way it was structured was that it was one deck, bring 15 card side deck. So we got a lot of the same decks that showed up, and mostly Lee Sin. With that said, one of the best counters to Lee Sin was Warmothers or TLC or whatever combination of Shadow Isles, Freljord really that you could think of, but I know Warmothers has pretty much been one of the most popular decks since the game's inception. So my name is Justin, also known as Shit Just Works. Today we are going over Warmothers Control versus two decks that are incredible right now. We have Lee Sin with the Diana in it, will be the second game, and then the first game is going to be TF Swain, which is definitely a hard one to crack. So as always, we are going to go through that deck first, followed by those two games. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for all of your Legends of Runeterra content needs, including tournaments, decks, all the good stuff. Yeah, you know. And then like it, of course. And yeah, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with going through the deck. All right, and here is the Warmothers deck. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this deck just because it is everywhere. You can find it online pretty easy. This deck has been around since the beginning of freaking time with this game. But there will be a link and a deck code in the description below. So go ahead and check it out if you guys do want to go ahead and use this particular version. So with that said, this particular version is basically, it's your typical Warmothers. Just some of these spells really are just changed. You know, for some of the matchups I've been seeing on ladder personally. So as of late, I've been seeing a lot of, aggro initially, which is why most of this is catered towards aggro. And then obviously we want to make sure that we have a good matchup versus something like Lee Sin, which people are playing. And TF Swain is a thing as well that a lot of people are playing. So that's what I've seen personally on ladder. You could argue these choices one way or the other. But if you're new to the deck, here's what you do. If you're new to the game, new to the deck, you don't know what the heck Warmother's call is, well, each round you summon the top ally from your deck. So the idea is you put a bunch of big old dudes in your deck, and they get summoned after you play this. Now, the drawback obviously is it is 12 mana. That is a hefty mana cost. Going up against Ionia decks feels like shit because deny, because that's the thing. So you definitely want to try to play around that. But once this does go off, you have things like Tryndamere, Rekindler, which does proc its effect off of being summoned from Warmother's Call. You have the Soul Gorger for a little bit of sustain, especially versus something like the aggro matchup. We have Trundle. We have Aversion Hearthguard, which also happens to boost everything up in the deck. So the only real dead one would be Wording Stones, but we do need that in here, obviously, for the ramp alongside Catalyst of Aeons. Honestly, when I say you could argue these spells, I've seen people play 3 Troll Chant. I've seen people play 3 Unspeakable Horror. I've seen people play 3 Avalanche. Like, I've seen so many, not lately, not so much with the Avalanche, but, I don't really think that many people are playing it lately. But, again, aggro. I wanted the Avalanche in here. And actually, this Avalanche has surprisingly got me crazy value, which you're going to see in at least one of these games, I think. But with that said, I'm not going to blurb too much more about the deck. We're going to get right into the gameplay. You guys can start to see why some of these cards are in here and how you kind of want to go about playing this deck. All right, and let's go ahead and get started with game 1 here of TF Swain. And I personally think this is a pretty hard matchup. A lot of the times, I mean, both decks have a really big late game. TF Swain, obviously, if you get Swain Leviathan, everybody loves that combo. That's the thing. If we're able to get that off, then we're going to have quite the problem on our hand because it doesn't matter how big a units we get, they're going to get stunned. But what I can say is in our starting hand, we got 2 Catalyst of Aeons. That is the dream. That is what you want. We're not worried about this damage because we are able to just heal up for 3 with the Catalyst of Aeons. We are forced to just use that one there, not really getting any use of the heal because you don't want to pass your turn. You never don't want to use Catalyst of Aeons, even if you're not going to get healed from it. It's not a big deal. We do have the option to play Catalyst of Aeons again this turn, which you could argue. The problem is if we do that, we do not get this Trundle out. So I personally am always going to prioritize getting Trundle or Hearthguard out on turn 5. It is a beefy unit that is hard to remove. and your opponent needs to immediately deal with it. In our case, I don't know, somehow our opponent dealt with it with this Keg and the TF. I thought it was going to be Ravenous Flock, but it ended up being Noxian Fervor. I'm actually much more okay with the Noxian Fervor because our opponent is using a lot of resources at that point to remove the Trundle, because Trundle is a very hard 5-drop to actually remove, so I'm surprised they were able to do that there. But we do get the other Catalyst of Aeons off. So this is really important, because obviously the later in the game you get, the less value and the less anything you're going to get out of Catalyst of Aeons, right? It's just not going to do anything for you. We actually got the dream. We actually managed to somehow get all 3 Catalyst of Aeons here. You might not even want all 3, to be honest with you. You might only want 2 most games. But this will get us to turn 10 by the time our opponent's on turn 7. And this gives us a pretty large advantage in regards to tempo. Or at least it'll swing it back in our favor for tempo. Because you can see our opponent is trying to go really wide. And this is generally one of the things that TF Swain can do, right? Like, TF Swain, every deck plays differently towards their matchups. And TF Swain, one of the things that it has the capability of doing in some matchups is doing exactly what it's doing now and going really wide. We have 2 House Spiders that have been dropped. We have 2 Arachnoid Sentries. All we need is an Elise or an Arachnoid Host. we got ourselves a Spider deck. We might as well be playing against a Spider deck at this point. But this is what they can do. And against Warmothers, it is generally what you want to do. You want to try to beat them down before they get up to that 10 mana and they're able to do anything. But we are able to kind of stabilize with these larger units. You know, they can be pretty good blockers here. In this case, this interaction... All right, so my opponent is basically committing to Make It Rains just to kill the Avarosian Hearthguard, because they understand that if they kill the Hearthguard, that's a unit that I no longer have, and I'm short on units in this deck. This deck does not have a lot of units, which means my opponent is going to be able to just smash my face in. So I do like the play by my opponent. However, obviously it gets punished by that Grasp of the Undying. Leviathan, on the other hand, is something that you do immediately want to get rid of, right? There's a couple things. So I want to go back to matchups real quick here for a second. When you are playing matchups, you need to save certain cards in most situations. Sometimes, not all the time. So as an example, this matchup, you usually want to be saving Vengeance for Leviathan. There's no other over-the-top cards that you really are that concerned about other than Leviathan. Mainly because of Leviathan's effect starting the turn. If they get a Swain down, you're kind of screwed. Even Riptide, you don't really want to use Vengeance on. It only has 4 health. You usually don't have that much of a problem killing it, trading it with something like a Hearthguard or whatever. Another example, Lee Sin, which you're going to see in the next game. You usually want to try to save something like a Vengeance and a Vile Feast together, because that will be able to kill Lee Sin on top of our opponent playing a Spell Shield, right? So just a lot to think about there. But getting back into the game, all right, our opponent honestly has us in a pretty crappy spot right now with this Guillotine, but I am really liking Avalanche right now. I am loving this card. So if you see, I'm able to keep passing back to my opponent here because I know they're going to play the Guillotine. Now, this last pass is kind of risky, but I'm able to do it because my opponent still can't attack with this Swain. So I can allow my opponent to fully commit. Now, I pass back again, and I actually still am okay, or not pass, but I play the Wording Stone to kind of like bait something else out of my opponent. I'm able to do this because I still have this Tryndamere that will block that Swain. So I know at most I'm going to take 6 damage from everything else attacking. That gets the Arachnoid Sentry out of my opponent, and now we're able to play a sweet, sweet Avalanche. That is like the dream Avalanche. Now on the flip side, unfortunately, the Swain attack does go through. Still does a significant amount of damage. But we do have a Vengeance. We have options. We have things we can do. But this is getting difficult for us now because we have still not... So remember, I told you guys at the beginning of this video. So the name of this deck is a Warmother's deck. Yep, that's the name of a card, I promise. And we still don't have it. There's no Warmothers. It's nowhere to be found. And that's bad, especially this late in the game. Because our opponent has a lot more ways of drawing refuel than we do. Like, Warmothers basically is our refuel. We don't have any additional draw beyond that. Like, see, now in our opponent, like, Twisted Fate even. If that Twisted Fate levels up, that is a lot of refuel. So we are in a really bad spot right now. This Death's Hand. So this, all right. my opponent does 2 back-to-back Death's Hand, so I can appreciate the aggressiveness because they do understand that they need to finish out the game. I think they understand anyways before I get Warmothers, because if I do get Warmothers online, they're screwed. This Harsh Winds came in huge here to be able to trade with his TF and prevent the damage on the Zap Spray Fin. I'm at 5 and I don't have any resources. I can't let this Zap Spray Fin get through at all. Still not drawing a freaking Warmothers. Like, come on, man. There's 3. The deck plays 3. I'm the first person to not tell you to ever play 3 of like a super high cost card like that. But I did it in this deck and I still can't even draw it. What the hell, man? Now this is actually a really important turn. My opponent likely has a Riptide Rex. And I need to not allow them to get a plunge. Even if they don't likely have it, they cannot get Riptide Rex off because that is bad for me. It could also potentially kill me. And also, taking 2 damage from Zap Spray Fin, I could just die straight out to Noxian Fervor. This Make It Rain, super risky by my opponent, works out for them. And then there you see the Riptide Rex. So, kind of feels bad that I am like on the wrong side of the RNG for this game. I can't draw Warmothers. My opponent's hitting their Make It Rains like they want. I get screwed. My opponent gets everything they need. But, now we have the Warmother's Call. This is where it all turns around. We also already drew 2 Wording Stones. So now the RNG is heavily in our favor. And this is a great first pull, especially because we've played both our Hearth cards now. Everything's going to be super beefy. This is amazing because this can trade with Riptide Rex and still live for another lifesteal attack. And this lifesteal is big right now. This lifesteal is enough to put me in a position where I'm not constantly worried about dying. Like this Zap Spray Fin poking for 2 damage now. I'm at 7. I'm not really worried about that. And this is where things start to get out of control because I'm just going to start summoning mad big units to the field and my opponent isn't going to be able to do jack about it. And we have an Atrocity. So there is 1 Atrocity in this deck, by the way, which I didn't spend too much time on the actual deck list. I've seen people play 2. Usually the TLC version, which I say version, but TLC is generally a different archetype entirely. Usually plays 2, or sorry, at least 2, sometimes 3 I've even seen, which is kind of weird. But anyways, we took that one away. Finally drawing the Warmothers last turn. You know, you finally got it. At least we got it off. That's all I can say. This hand, on the other hand, this is bad. Like, 2 Warmothers, 2 Grasp. The Vile Feast is probably the only saving grace at this point. But, alright, so this is interesting. I am playing the Withering Wail here, and this, you could argue this point, it's definitely a area of questioning. Question? Is that what I was going for? I play the Withering Wail to be mana efficient. Now, you can argue, well, yeah, but if you save the Withering Wail for later, maybe you get more value, yada, yada, yada. I'm playing it because, well, not only is it mana efficient, I don't burn the 1 mana, it also does the 1 damage to the goat, which I could theoretically maybe kill with the Vile Feast. But now that I draw the Trundle, that plan is kind of out the window. So I actually end up taking the attack from the goat where I could have Vile Feasted it there. I don't know. I feel like when you have that bad of a hand, I think you're better off playing some of the more expensive cards early, generally speaking, in my experience anyways, just because you're going to have a hard time playing everything in the first place. So if you have a chance to get some sort of decent value out of a high-cost card and save some of those low-cost cards for a little bit later, when you have that bad of a hand, I do think it's the right play to sometimes do something like that. So we'll see if it works out later on in the game, right? But we do have this Avalanche again, coming in clutch. Love the Avalanche. Now this, I will say, I think is a misplay. I don't know why I did this. I done messed up, peeps. I messed it up. I don't know if I think I thought Bastion didn't give +1/+1 for some reason. Oops. And the goat still lives. So I shouldn't have used that Vile Feast. And like I said earlier, in specific matchups, I actually would have wanted to save the Vile Feast to pair with this Vengeance that I have in my hand. Now, we do play 3 Vile Feast and an Unspeakable Horror, so we still have plenty of options to do a similar interaction if the Lee Sin does come down with a spell shield. We still don't see the Lee Sin, so I'm not too worried about that. It means our opponent just needs to draw it. This particular turn, the reason I'm grasping this Diana is because I'm playing around Pale Cascade. Pale Cascade is so freaking good, man. It's so good. Pale Cascade plus that Mentor of the Stones, on that Diana. Could have challenged my this big old troll dude chilling and wrecked me. And I need to protect this Trundle because guess what? He's the only unit I got. Yeah, feels bad, man. So and that's a theme you're gonna see a lot in Warmothers, I think. When you have, especially if you're playing freezes, and I think you're gonna see me utilize a freeze here in a little bit as well, actually. You need to protect your units because you don't have a lot of them. So when they are on the board, they need to stay on the board as either a protector or, you know, an aggressor. It's a lot of the reason why we see 3 Troll Chant in a lot of the Warmothers decks, because it not only is a defensive card similar to Frostbite as it reduces attack, but it also helps you to better trade with units and to better save your own units, right? So we do just let this go because at this point we don't care about the pillar. We need units. Now, okay, all right, here's the deal. Here is the deal. Now, we have both Warmothers in our starting hand against Nionia deck. God, that feels bad. We pretty much expect a deny here. The reason we don't get a deny, so that is huge, and now we'll probably win the game. But the reason I'm so willy-nilly about playing that Warmother's Call is that we do have 2 back-to-back Warmother's Call. We don't win this game unless we get a Warmother's Call off. At least I don't think so. We have a Ruination, sure, but it's not looking good. If there's ever a chance for us to get Warmother's Call off, it's a back-to-back Warmother's Call. It's putting our opponent on not having to deny, and it's only giving them 1 turn in between to change that. And probability-wise, I think that's the best decision. I'm not good at math. Who knows? But that was my plan. My plan was to play the back-to-back Warmother's Call. One of them at least goes off. Instead, we get the first one. So we're golden. Now we can just troll the rest of the game with these trolls on board. Ha! See what I... Pun intended there. So we have the lifesteal. Big old data hitting the field, giving us lifesteal. And I like Soul Gorger, personally. I think that it's good in all matchups, right? I mean, it's a 7 health body. Generally speaking, it's going to block a lot of the larger units from larger unit decks, like Demacia or Fiora Shen, unless there's some big-ass barrier shenanigan with a Green Glade that is like 77 attack. I don't know, but I like Soul Gorger. I think it's really good against aggro, too, especially in a pirate aggro meta right now. That 7 also blocks pretty nicely a Gangplank, so you're able to really prevent a lot of damage with that. It prevents all the damage from the overwhelm, and then you also get the 3 lifesteal. So at this point, I'm just trolling because if we get another Warmother, I'm not totally trolling. If we got this Warmothers off, we're actually going to not only summon a unit now, but then another unit to start the turn. We'll have a full field. We could probably just end the game that turn. So I think that's kind of what we're going for there, because we're probably going to get at least another Trundle or Tryndamere. There's another Tryndamere. So we got 2 Tryndamere. All right, this is the dream. Right? Like, this is why we play Warmothers. Right here. This is the dream. You want all the biggest units all the time. And we have not just 1, but 2 Tryndameres on board at the same time. This is one of the few ways you can get multiple champions outside of Thresh, a couple of Rekindler, a couple other ways. Multiple champions on the board. And, God, does it feel good to get multiple Tryndameres. Fun fact, though, and be careful with this. For anybody who might be new to the game, when you have multiple Tryndameres on the board and 1 dies, they all level up. So unfortunately, it's not like they all. It's very crucially not a last breath effect. Like if you actually read the card, if it was a last breath effect, every single individual Tryndamere unit would level up to level 2. Would stay at level 1, and then when it last breaths, go to level 2. In this case, it very specifically says when he dies, instead, he levels up to level 2. So it affects all of his units. So just something to take into consideration. I mean, it might not ever come up, but, you know, I'm just saying. So our opponent at this point is on their back foot. And what do we get? Ha-ha. We get a 3rd Tryndamere. Why? Because we can. Because when you can't kill your opponent for exact lethal, you do 30 damage in a turn. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I know it's a very... pretty common deck right now, and I'm actually having a lot of fun with Warmothers right now. And Warmothers was always criticized previously when it was first introduced into the game as kind of a boring deck, you know, uninteractive, yada yada, I don't know, whatever it was. But I don't know, one of the normal, usual complaints that a powerful deck gets in a metagame, right? So, but I'm having a lot of fun with Warmothers right now. We'll see how far it gets us this meta, and I'm looking forward to the patch updates next week, though. So, as always, everybody, my name is Shit Just Works. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel because this channel is the shit! And, as always, stay healthy, stay positive. I hope shit just works for you, and peace out.